have a TV show, you're author, you're starting courses. Like, what do you do to reset? And like, did Corona at all change the way in which you process? All right, we're waiting a second. What's up, Adrian?
Sorry, I don't know what just happened. My screen just went dark and it said pause. Anyway, so again.
Yeah, so you're a really busy guy. Just started a new brokerage company, TV show, author, media company. What do you do to reset? And like, has Corona or this pause changed the way in which you process it all?
I've really kind of settled into the work, right? Like I really like to work, and during 2020, I took time to really focus on kind of foundational items. Here, we left the brokerage we were at previously and started our own. In the middle of the pandemic, wrote a book, second book that comes out in February. So I spent a lot of time kind of using the time as I possibly could. And from this comes opportunity. You're seeing that in the real estate. I mean, the deals we've done in the last 90 days with incredibly optimistic purchasers, and we've been doing them kind of all over the country because we can. And we're doing deals now that we never would have done pre-COVID because these buyers would not have even been interested. And I think for the brokerage model, the whole reason we started Serhant in our new company is because I don't think the standard brokerage model works. And I think people are really, really scared of change. So we have a business plan that I think people think they know what it is, that we're going to start rolling out at the beginning of 2021 that I think will really shock a lot of people. But I think it's going to be the way brokerage works in the future.
Interesting. My guess is it's probably tied to helping build individual brands, but I'll leave time to be the test of that.
Sure.
So I have to imagine that like the thought of starting your own company has been a thought for a while. Like this isn't something new. Like it just didn't start because of Corona. What made you decide in the midst of a global pandemic to make one of the biggest shifts in your life?
I think there's no better time than the present. And to be honest, I'm planning on doing it for quite some time. As you correctly just mentioned, I had probably 2 days in March where I was really second guessing myself because everyone was telling me not to do it. Everyone was telling me just to wait, pause. Who knows what's going to happen to the world? This could go on for a year, all that. And I took all of that hesitation from others as a reason to move forward, because no one else is going to do it, right? Expectations would be nice and low, and what better time to really reset and think about your business as a whole, and from 30,000 feet up, when you're forced to not go outside. Like my job is running around showing apartments all day. Wasn't allowed to do that. So, okay, let's take a couple months and let's literally put this all together. I'm not going to get this time next year. I'm not going to get this time. So this is a weird, fucked up way of the world showing me now's the time to plan. Now's the time to do this.
Nice. I mean, listen, I got to tell you, you've done very impressive things in the time you've been in the business. We've been in the business probably about the same period of time, and your success is incredible. So I know whatever you do going forward, you're going to continue to kill it. But I want to shift a little bit to food because that's what I create a lot of content with on TikTok. And I know I've read or heard you talk somewhere about like when you were a kid, you were a fat kid, right? And you liked your pudding. I remember there was like a pudding story and you didn't understand why you couldn't have 4 or 5 puddings. How do you look at food now? And as a New Yorker where food is like New York, like how is that a part of your life?
I've honestly, yes, I have a massive sweet tooth. I think I could eat most people under the table. As a kid, I hadn't really connected food to weight, early on. And I think until it became a social issue and it became embarrassing.
Mhm.
It became an issue with running and playing sports and all that. And I now food for me is very much a game. Enjoy food, and I have my cheat days, but I make food a game. So I intermittent fast, and I eat between 12 and 6.
Mhm.
And by doing that, I can remove kind of all the triggers and and the what would you call them? The triggers and any of the kind of distractions from food and all those things where it's like, nah, bag of chips, it's not, it's totally fine, and then it's like 3 bags. I don't do that. So now, so it's been much, and I definitely have way more energy that way, and I can enjoy myself a little bit more. I've never been a person who just sits there and counts calories or anything like that. But
Mhm.
if I eating window, I kind of do that automatically without actually having to think about it, and I kind of eat what I want to eat during that time. At 6 o'clock, I'm done, and I actually feel so much better the next day.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people that I've been talking to recently talk about intermittent fasting and how it's made them, incredibly more vibrant in everything that they do. How do you play that into, and I know obviously COVID has changed this, but how do you play that into like your business dinners that you take?
Then well, I haven't had to do a business dinner since like early March, so that's been nice. It's been this weird, fun, sad, but relaxing break from all those things. Like I haven't got no holiday parties. At this time, third last year, I would look very differently on the Zoom. Look beat up, exhausted. You're out every night, which is good. It's part of the job.
Yeah,
But if I have a client dinner, I try to always get food in before 8. If it has to be later, I'll eat later. I'll eat it. I'll have my first meal at like 3 o'clock. Make sure I'm done eating by 9. For my body, I've been able to figure out that 6 hours is a good enough eating window for me. But I make sure I don't do that like every day.
right.
Since earlier, some days I'm so hungry that screw it, I'll start eating at 10 o'clock, but I'll just finish a little bit early.
So do you like do the meal prep thing, or you like actually eating out at random New York City places?
No, no, I would lose my mind that way. I don't ever want to. I only have so much time, and so I don't ever want to have to think about food during the day, especially Monday. Okay? The same reason I have a car and a driver. I got Yuri, my driver, 7 years ago, way before I could ever afford him.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't think about transportation during the day. I want as many minutes as possible to work. And if I got to go in and out of the train, or drive and park, or if I got to, say, okay, I'm hungry, let me go down to the deli, then I got to stand in line, I got to figure out what I want, I come back, like you end up losing hours of your day. And if you think about what your time is worth and you multiply it all together, you end up spending so much money waiting and getting around. And so it ended up being an investment for me to uh, have somebody who could get me around all day long about it. And two, I use a meal prep company that's based in Brooklyn called Food Matters, and they're awesome. I think you can probably Google them. I've used them for years. They send me a menu every Friday. I pick out what I want. It's all healthy. It's all good. Sometimes it's gross, but it's gross because it's super healthy. And they deliver it to me fresh every day. I don't do any of the meal preps where like the food's frozen or it's been mailed to me. I like
Hmm.
just because they like cook it that night and drop it off, I think at like 4 a.m. or something like that. And then I eat that food that day. And that's it. Whatever's in the bag, that's what I eat Monday through Friday. I don't eat anything else.
So on the weekends then, do you have some variance? Like, is that when you may go out to eat, or is that when you may have your cheat day? And like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I'm a massive kid on Saturdays. Like brunch is, anything. I'll eat anything on Saturdays. I do my life on Saturdays. But I need it. Like I know that I need that. And like the breads and sweets. And that. It's not every Saturday, but but I look forward to it. It gives you something to look forward to. And then Sundays, I go right back to the hour. Because I'm working on Sundays.
Right, right. Of course, you're showing. So, do you have? I want to talk about some favorites then, because obviously, you've been here long enough that you have some favorites. So, what is your favorite bagel?
My favorite bagel.
Do you have? Well, do you have a favorite bagel? I would assume
Yeah.
so.
I've lived downtown for a long time, and
Mhm.
there's Duckers on Chambers. That's a great kind of bagel spot. Great, like bacon, egg, and cheese, toasted everything bagel. That's a good spot there. But we like that. That's like a good Saturday morning ritual.
Nice, nice. What about pizza?
To be honest, and people aren't going to like this,
Oh no, no, no.
different pizza places in New York City, and I'm always like, all right, this pizza great, thanks so much. And the Emily's and the Village, where, but I will tell you, like if I had my choice, a good old Domino's pizza is still awesome. And and I'm not ashamed of that. I would prefer that over some custom made pizza somewhere else where I got to be like, oh, leaves, awesome, thank you so much, or interesting. Oh, here, this is great. I don't care about your artisan making a pizza. Just like give me what I need.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Domino's thin crust pizza is actually really, really, really good. It's like a hidden gem.
Yeah,
So you said you love sweets, right? So
yeah.
so tell me a little bit about that. Like what are your go-to candies, or is it like more chocolate, or is it more like savory? Like
No, I'm not a big chocolate guy. My
okay,
wife, but we like I've always been a big ice cream guy. Like I love going for ice cream. There's a place, I think it's in the East Village. It's like I think it's Scoops and Cones or Sundays and Cones or something like that. That's a cool little place with crazy flavors, and so that's a good spot. But I've always liked ice cream. As far as candy, I've always liked Twizzlers. Those have been like my go-to, or like ish, or I don't know, like sweet stuff like that.
cool. So you got a bunch of things going on. I know you got a book that's coming out that you've been plugging very hard. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I spent quarantine. It's interesting. Like I wrote my first book, Sell It Like Serhant. It took me a long time to write it. No one knew I was writing it. It was really like 10 years of my life. The writings that I've given to my agent, everything. I put that out there. This book I wrote in April, uh, and fine tuned it over the rest of the spring and into the summer, and it comes out. It's it, it's the secret to Sell It Like Serhant. It's where Sell It Like Serhant is like the tools, and the strategies and the tips and the tricks and everything you need to know on how to sell and how to build a sales career and how to get how to close, how to talk to buyers, how to talk to sellers, all of that stuff. Um, uh, Big Money Energy is the glue that puts all of that together. It's my confidence blueprint, uh, and manual, really, and everything that I know about how to go from that kid who just likes sweets and wants to stay inside and watch reruns of Saved by the Bell every day, um, uh, to guy who can walk down the street and confidently talk to strangers, and pick up the phone and doesn't know and have a conversation with someone much smarter and much wealthier and get that person him all integral to being a professional, being an adult, and definitely being a successful salesperson is what Big Money Energy is all about. And I've never found a book like it before, so that's why I ended up writing it.
So tell me a little bit about that process, because you said the first one took you 10 years and then the second one took you a few months. So what did that look like for you? Because in the back of my mind, I've been quietly writing a book for a while, and it's just I'm like stuck.
Yeah, I I would say I'm a pretty disciplined person, and I really appreciate structure, and so I don't really let things get in the way when I put my mind to something. It's not like Serhant was just once we wrote it, it wrote self pretty quickly. But it was more of an amalgamation of everything that I'd done over 10 years and my life completely before that. This was a light bulb going off in my head when I realized in quarantine that so many of our course members, we do a big online sales course for Sell Like Serhant, and so many of the course members would write into me or would ask me, they'd say things like, "Okay, I got a pitch, but my palms are sweaty. What do I do?" Or I got to make this call, but I don't feel comfortable. I feel like they're going to know I'm young. Or I've got to, or I don't think people think I don't want to go to that meeting and no one's going to like me. Like all of the self-doubt that people have, that at the end of the day is really just and this fear that we project out into the world can be fixed. And I did it. And so I kind of just sat there next to my garage in New Hampshire, my parents' garage, in the snow, and just poured everything I knew into work. And then cleaned it up and fixed it, and cleaned it up and fixed it. Publisher is awesome at Hachette, so they really helped me structure thoughts. They did the same thing in Self, because sometimes my thoughts all go this way, and they're like, okay, great, but we need to take this and put it here, so that there's a line. But it moved pretty smoothly, and I think I think it's gonna help a lot of people. I hope it does, because I poured my life into it.
That's dope. So I want to shift a little to the media company. So I know Serhant Media Company is something that you've put a lot into. Adrian is a good friend and a huge part of the reason that we're sitting here today. So thank you, Adrian. But talk to me about that, because as we both know, the majority of our peers in the real estate business don't create content, don't live on the internet, don't engage with the rest of the world like that. So talk to me about that shift and creating that and how you envision that for the future as much as you can share.
Well, what I wanted to do, one of the things I wanted to do when I company was I wanted to figure out how I can help the agents that work with me build their own brands in the same way that I did over the last 10 years. Right? This isn't like a pipe dream that I have. It's okay. This is what worked for me. So I can't give everyone their Bravo, but I will tell you, sell more real estate now and generate more leads on YouTube, Facebook than I ever have from being on Bravo for 10 years. And so that's where the market is, and that's where the future is. And that's where our future buyers are, future clients, and kids of our current clients who have a lot of influence over their parents. And so I have really built out the film studio. We're, I think, 10 people now. And they exist to help create the content and tell the stories for our clients, our developers, our properties, and our agents. And one of the big initiatives has been with YouTube, creating a real estate network called Listed, where we are producing individual shows or with their passion projects, what they're good at. So we've had 2 shows come out so far, and they're retaining their view count against subscriber base is like 100%, which I think
that's amazing. Yeah.
Growing, it's small, it's growing. Our next show is Mansions that stars one of the agents here. Loves food. I think Jason Eats, I think is his show where, he loves food, but he loves real estate. So we made a show for him, goes into beautiful listings, but features the kitchen. And then he cooks a meal. So it's a cooking show, but tries to replicate a meal from a local restaurant. And we have that come in and taste test it. And so it's funny, informational, it's interesting. So that one it premieres when? December 28th? Premieres December. And so we do a lot of things like that. But listen, if you're not producing content, if you're not selling through video, then you'll be okay for a short period of time. But you're eventually going to be the person who didn't think the internet was going to be a thing in 1930. So you want to take advantage of that passive audience building as much as you can. Like, people reach out to me all the time because someone has taken one of our property tours on YouTube and has forwarded it to somebody who forwarded it to somebody else who forwarded it to that person who reaches out to me. So it's not just the people that are in your audience. It's the ability to save, screenshot, forward, text to people. You can't do that on Bravo. You know, $1 million listing, what's someone going to do? They're going to take a photo of their TV. Like, it's much different. And all the listings and properties we do on $1 million listing, and you know, they sell for the most part. And so kind of the life deal is over by the time the show airs, like a year after we film it. You know, we get a new listing now. The studios team can put together a kick-ass property tour tomorrow, and we can go to market with everything in 2 days. Massive audience that I couldn't hit otherwise. So it's really become incredibly, incredibly important.
So is this your hedge against like the automation of the real estate business? Because as we know, there's a lot of segments that very well could be turned into an algorithm.
Yeah, I think, and I say this all the time, like, until a house figures out how to sell itself to another house, and maybe Bezos and Musk are working on that, I don't know. There will always be a need for real estate agents because relationships, you know, like, the real estate is just the widget. I broker buyers and sellers together, right? It's relationships, it's the emotions, it's the wants, the needs, desires. And so I honestly find with more automation, more data, it's more overwhelming, and tougher to understand what decisions clients should make. So they need us more and more. And so I appreciate it, right? I use the data against the data all the time to my benefit. And that's what I teach our agents to do. And that's what I teach people to do, of course. So the media angle is how do you build a brand? Like, all the tools, platforms are right here for you, right here. And if you're not making use of them, I'll help you make use of them. And so that's what we've been doing. And I've been a legal real estate brokerage for 83 days. We've been doing it.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So,
well, 83 days.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you cut off. I said we're getting old now. We're a good old 83 days.
Yeah, no, listen, I mean, you got to start somewhere. And honestly, this has probably been brewing in your brain for years. So you've been playing this out for many, many seasons at this point. So to wrap, because I know you're busy. So you got TV, you got the media company, you got your new brokerage, you got books, you got courses. What's next? Like, because you don't seem like the type that's going to stop anytime soon. Like, you're not going to be in 2 years, be like, all right, I'm done, I'm going home, I'm going to live in the woods.
No. The real estate company is everything for me. So that as we grow that and build it and really clue people into what we're actually doing versus what they think we're doing, you'll see it's a lot of work. That's what's next. I'll always write more books because I can't really stop. $1 Million Listing season 9, I think, comes out in March or April or something like that. There's other shows we're working on too, but just more, man, more, right? As much as you can. I don't want to leave anything on the table, right? Do it all.
So if you could leave people with advice for 2021 or beyond, or just in general, like what would you tell people?
I would say if 2020 has taught us anything going into 2021, it's that you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You got to go outside that comfort bubble, outside that comfort zone. And I think you should really spend the next week and write down everything about yourself you want to change going into 2021, and then just fucking do it and make that determination and just do it, because before you know it, we're all going to be over, right? And it'll be too late at that point. I mean, it's never too late, but like at some point it does get too late.
Mm-hmm.
Stop procrastinating, stop waiting, just start, just do it. The worst thing that can happen is that you'll start, you know?
That is true. That is true. Well, listen, I truly appreciate you taking the time. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a Happy New Year's. Be safe. And, you know, once this is all over, let's get up and shake hands and meet.
All right. Sounds good, man. Have a good holiday.
You too.
Yeah.
Later. That was dope. Dope conversation. We have another. I don't know if he's in queue right now. Hang on one second. We have another live right now with go live with, hang on. Here we go. What is New York? So next, let me just make sure this is Rick. What is going on?
What's up, Mike? How are you?
Good, good. How are you doing?
Good. Let me know if this cuts out at any point because this is just never works for me. So
No
let
worries.
me know.
So for those of you that are with us that don't know who this gentleman is, Rick is the brains and brawn behind Subway Creatures and What is New York, two huge multi-channel domains that I listen. I've seen blown up in the time that I've known you. So talk to us a little bit about what you do and the progression, for
Yeah, of
those that may
course.
not know.
Of course. So like you just mentioned, I started Subway Creatures back in, I want to say it was maybe 2011, 2012, actually before Instagram was even a thing. And it started as a website. Basically, it was just documenting all the wild, crazy, funny, bizarre things that the New York City subway had to offer.
Mhm.
And, it just started as a hobby. I was actually working in television for a while. And before you knew it, it just started kind of snowballing and turning into, what was something I never actually pictured growing as big as it has now. And then naturally along the way, people were just sending me a lot of videos and photos of stuff happening outside of the subway in New York. So I had to kind of make an account for that as well. But both of these accounts, like you mentioned, have kind of grown exponentially. It's been an awesome ride, and the sky's the limit. How I kind of feel, more especially for the What is New York page than the subway, because you're not stuck in that little niche.
Right. So I know when you and I spoke and you were a guest on my podcast, maybe a year and change ago at this point, What is New York was just like you were just launching it or just launched. So talk to me about like how What is New York, what is similar to what you may have seen with Subway Creatures.
Right. So, like I had just mentioned, the page, it just naturally took form, naturally
Hmm.
took off, and the content was speaking for itself. And that was the way it was with Subway Creatures as well. The content was we as New Yorkers, we've all seen it. Um,
Hmm.
it wasn't really being documented in one place. That's why I think the page was both pages were kind of as successful as they are. um, but I think like most things, you need to expand, and you need to expand the brand, and you kind of have to start going off a little off on your own, which is what kind of the next phases I see as for this. um, but the people who follow the account are my eyes and ears out there, at least as of right now. And without them, I don't think either one of these pages would exist.
So you have two huge New York brands. You get a lot of engagement. How is it different than your average New York experience? And I think this is something you just touched on that people don't truly understand. Like when you said as New Yorkers we see this, it's
Right,
true. Like this is the New York we live. Like
right,
because you're not originally from New York, correct?
right. Correct. I'm actually only about 15 minutes outside New York City in New Jersey, is where I
Mhm.
was born and raised. But I've been, just because of the close distance, I've always grown up in the city, even though I didn't technically live there. And I've actually been in the city now, I think it's about 11 years. And I think to your point, as New Yorkers, you know, we see all these crazy things that, and you tell a lot of these stories to friends and family who may not be from the area, and they
Mhm.
either don't believe you, they may think you're exaggerating. And that's actually why these pages, I started them, because I was sending friends and family, so many pictures and videos of stuff. And they were like, is this just a regular day for you? And I was like, to be honest, that's, a lot of these characters that show up on the page, people know them. They're actually regulars in the city.
Yeah.
People know the people in Union Square who are constantly, whether it's performance art or just the people who are always around as those kind of regulars. They've become the people who everyone recognize. On a summer day going to Union Square, you're going to see a lot of these people. But I think it's also important to touch upon those may not necessarily be quote unquote the real New Yorkers. I get that a lot. And I think that's why it's also important for the page to document a lot of the stuff that, us New Yorkers encounter on a regular basis. And by that, I mean, it's one thing to show the performance artist side of things, but it's also, the situational things. For instance, I think a great example is we just had that really bad snowstorm recently. As New Yorkers, I think we can all compare to how much it sucks when it snows in the city because, normally it doesn't accumulate, but when it does, it makes our situation really shitty, especially walking around. We run into these slush puddles on every corner. And I think it was pretty funny. I did post something the other day about the slush puddles. And there were a lot of people who didn't understand because, they may not be from New York. And the one thing I don't like doing is I don't like gatekeeping. I don't like, telling people that, you just don't get it. If you're a New Yorker, that's the only way. I don't like doing that because the whole point of the page is kind of for people to experience what we're experiencing also. So, there were a lot of people that were, commenting, why am I staring at a puddle in New York? And I remember thinking like, man, if you only understood that puddle has no bottom to it, you are going fully under if you step in one of those. And we've all been there before. We've all been there. It looks like part of the sidewalk or the street. You step in it, and next thing you know, you're 3 feet underwater. And that's just one of those common occurrences as a New Yorker that we've all been in. And there are so many situations like that. Where, we all get caught in the rain, we're all in a subway where, the guy with smelly armpits is standing over you, not as much recently, but, we've all been in that rush hour car. There's a lot of unspoken rules that like people know, like if a subway comes in and you realize there's an empty car, but all the other cars are packed, everyone knows you stay the hell away from that empty car because there is a reason it is empty. So, it's a lot of situational things, but it's also, the unique people who make up this awesome city. And, it's not to point and laugh at people. It's more to celebrate the uniqueness of New York and how there's just so many different kinds of people in the city. And that's one of the things I think's, one of the most awesome parts.
Yeah, it's very funny you bring up the empty subway car because I just put out a video on TikTok about like things not to do in New York, and that was one of the things. And the comments were like people didn't understand why not to get into an empty subway car. I was blown away. I was like, it's
what
empty.
were some of the other things on that list?
Don't talk to the free CD guys.
The mixtape guys.
Yeah. Don't take pictures with the characters in Times Square.
Yeah, this is all good advice.
Yeah. Don't buy the I Love New York shirts. And don't randomly stop in the middle of a busy sidewalk to look up at a building.
Oh man, that's a pet peeve of mine. All right, so I'll ask you this after. One of my biggest pet peeves, and this is such a New Yorker thing to actually happen, are getting on a subway car and the people who insist on listening to music without headphones. I don't know why that just drives me insane, but it's such a New York thing to happen. And for some reason, that is probably one of my biggest pet peeves. What would you consider one of your biggest pet peeves?
I don't know, because you said Subway, and I'm like, fuck, I haven't
Well,
been on the
I guess it
Subway
doesn't
really
even
since
have to.
March.
It doesn't even have to be in the subway. But
Um,
like what brought this up is you mentioned people stopping on the sidewalk.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
When us New Yorkers have places to be, and a lot of us are speed walkers, and that also, you avoid Times Square altogether just for that reason alone.
Oh,
But
100%.
right, right. So
So,
what
so,
would you consider your biggest pet peeve?
so when I'm driving, um, it's very close to like taxi drivers and like obnoxious bike riders.
Yeah.
Like that just
So one thing I learned through my page is
yeah.
um the bikers in New York City are so like that is such a split down the middle of people who are all for biking through the city and the people who can't stand the bikers. And I just stand in the middle and I just like to post things about it and then just let everyone,
Yeah.
fight in the
Yeah.
comment section. I'll tell you, man, my comment section is probably one of the most toxic, at the same time beautiful places, because some of the comments are so funny, some of them are so toxic, but it's just the best to watch throwing up a post and watching things unfold is one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. But it's crazy to me. Like I see every time I'm driving, right? I see at least 3 to 5 bikers that like almost died, not because of the driver's fault, but because of like shit they're doing, and I'm like,
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, you got to be, as a biker. I haven't. I'm not a huge biker. I'm obviously a subway guy, but um, sometimes I totally understand why people are biking. But there's so much to look out for, not only people but cars, traffic. So it's obviously so dangerous. Riding. I know that they talk about opening up a lot of bike lanes in the city, and they need to open up more. But I give people a lot of credit. I'll tell you what's the next level are the messenger bikers, the guys who are
yeah,
delivering stuff. I mean, it's like that Kevin Bacon movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it, where he's a bike messenger, but these guys are for real and, like, to be honest, a lot of the time reckless, just weaving in and out of traffic. But that's next level. That's not
yeah.
city bike. Those are two completely different things.
Yeah. It's different because like I've spent a little time in Amsterdam, and like the bike culture there is just as prevalent, bike lane wise, like length of bike lanes. But you see a big difference. It's like the people there follow the rules. Like the bikers are very much like where they need to be, how they need to be. But being New Yorkers, it's obvious. We struggle with the rules a little bit.
Yeah, and no one's gonna tell New Yorkers what to do. I mean, they can try, but we're not very good listeners.
So I know you talked about being a big subway rider. Since Corona has started, have you still been taking the subway, or have you like changed the way in which you commute?
No, I've been taking the subway. Obviously you have to mask up, so that's not an issue. I did see an article, and granted, I don't know what the actual proof is behind all of this, but I did see something about the subways being one of the safest places to actually ride. I don't know what the science is behind that. I don't know
Yeah,
how that works, but they did say it's very unlikely to actually catch COVID on the subways. Um, I know the subway, and trust me, I can speak from experience just from, the content that I put out with the Subway Creatures account. Um, it's struggling down there. Ridership is obviously down. But the good part, at least for me, is that the content is still there. The people are still documenting what's happening down there, and somehow there's still always going to be content down there. I'll tell you, in the beginning of quarantine, that was really tough. People would always tell me, the Subway Creatures account is so great. You'll always have content no matter what, as long as people are riding the subway. All of a sudden, bam, quarantine hits. No one's even allowed to be in the subway unless you're an essential worker. I know that was the case for at least a couple months. And that really really affected what I do. basically on a lockdown, and there's no one even to send, videos because there's nothing even going on down there. So, COVID obviously affected all of us, and you can see, it's interesting to see the different areas that it actually affected. It's almost like a domino effect.
Mhm.
That being said, things are not back to normal down there, as you can imagine. In fact, the MTA is really struggling right now. I think that they're looking for, a lot of funding, a lot of help, because, ridership is down, and people are finding alternative ways to get around. A lot of people are working from home now. I know so many people who don't even have to commute into the city anymore. They don't have to commute to work. They can just, set up a laptop in their apartment and they're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to my office maybe 6 times in the last 6 months, like, and it's
Well, you know
randomly.
what? You're kind of a good example, because obviously we saw this kind of this big exodus from the city
Mhm.
fairly recently. It probably, what was it, towards the end of the summer, right? And I don't know how many vacant apartments they're saying are in the city now, but for what you do, I mean, real estate's got to be really tough, right?
Yes and no. So, like, the real estate world has changed significant, as a lot of other things have, because of technology. So we, thankfully, we're always a little bit tech forward in creating content and creating videos and so on and so forth. So we had video tours of every unit we represented before, like, quarantine started. So very much what we were able to do is still work without having to work. The other thing that's been nice is showings. You don't have to show as much in order to do the same transactions, because in being able to send, that video, if you're in the market for an apartment, right, and you're looking at videos, and the videos are done well, they're not like shitty images that are stretched and manipulated, right? Like, okay, well, this will work for me. That this bedroom's, or this living room, or this won't work because this kitchen is too small, or so on and so forth. So it's helped us to honestly do less work, and year over year we're actually up, probably a little bit. And a lot of it also has to do personally with, like, restructuring. I brought my wife on board a little over a year ago, and she runs the whole operational side of the business, and that's freed up time to just do other things and create. I've spent more time on TikTok than Instagram, honestly, but it's a changing world. And I think, right before I was talking with you, I was talking with Ryan Serhant, who just started his own brokerage company, and it's essentially very much going to be around building brands for their agents rather than supporting the brokerage company's brand. And I think we're going to see a lot of changes over the next 5 to 10 years in the way in which the business operates. But I think that's every business. Like, I think
Yeah.
every business is going to see that.
Yeah, I think there's a huge adapting phase that, people are doing. And, I think more specifically as New Yorkers, I think we're really good with that. I don't think anyone's seen anything to this level, but I think that we're really good at adapting to situations. And, that's one thing that I think is, kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, in a way.
Listen, I think in the bigger picture, like, I think we're losing by the time this is done, we'll have lost somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million New Yorkers, right? So we'll go from like 8.6 million to 7.6 to 8.1, somewhere in that range, right? And I think the residual effect is going to be 5 to 10 years. 5 years if the economy is very, like, rebounds quicker. 10 years if things take a little longer. Because what I'm seeing is I'm not seeing people hired. Like, jobs aren't coming here.
Right.
There's certain industries where jobs are hiring. Law is definitely one of them, or nursing and medical field is one of them. But, like, finance jobs, these big companies are, instead of hiring a kid out of college at $80,000 a year, they're giving that same kid $60,000 a year to stay in Kansas,
Right.
which is great for the kid. Don't get me wrong, but now that money doesn't come into New York, and that person doesn't, live here, and help the economy. So I think
Right.
what New York's going to need, I think we're really going to need to see like a real tech revolution. Like if we know New York is not incredibly tech forward. We're just we got time indicators in the subway just now, and that's been going on in London for about a decade and a half.
Yeah.
So I think that will be the next thing, because I think retail is going to get screwed, and you'll see tech companies come in and really change the landscape of that business and of what New York looks like, because I think
Right.
that's where we're going.
Yeah, and I honestly, I hope, we all hope that that happens sooner than later. But, one thing that I just wanted to really quickly point out,
Yeah.
for anyone who might have jumped into this live, who follows me, just to say what you're doing basically a marathon today, right? And it's
Yeah.
basically to raise money. Just that's the important thing that I wanted to get across to anyone who might have jumped in here who follows me, is that you're raising money for the really dying restaurant bar industry right now, which is super important to me. I've been doing everything that I can to actually help as well. Every Friday, I do posts dedicated in the morning to spotlighting or featuring, anywhere from 2 to 3 restaurants who can get involved. So can you just, for anyone who follows me, who's in here, explain what you're doing on your part as well?
Yeah, no, and thank you for the segue to that. So, really just trying to use whatever influence and relationships that I have to raise money to help New York City restaurant workers. I create a lot more content on TikTok than on Instagram, and a lot of the content I create is like New York City based with a specificity kind of around food. And the industry has been so hard hit, and we all know people that work in a restaurant that either don't have a job, or their hours are significantly been cut, or because people aren't eating, they're not making tip money, or they're unemployed, or even like the struggling business owner that's got 5 or 6 employees that's trying to stay open, but every regulation under the sun. And listen, some of it's obviously necessary to keep people safe, right? But they're struggling. So I really just wanted to take a moment to use whatever influence I had to try to do good for these people, because at the end of the day, food is one of those things that kind of makes New York New York.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And I'll be completely honest with you. I do chalk some of that exodus up to the restaurant and bar industry dying. A lot of people were love counting on that kind of a thing, for whether it's a night out. And now the seasons are changing, and some of these places have had to build these outdoor, we've been joking about it, how they've been building these outdoor restaurants, and it's basically the same thing that you've done on the inside. Now you're doing on the outside. It's just in actually a smaller area. And not only that, you're putting them in the street where there's traffic. So, in a way, it's kind of counterproductive. But some of these places don't even have heaters, to be able to compete with the winter coming up. And I just don't see how a lot of them are going to survive. So I think just bringing the awareness to the fact that, so many of these places are struggling, and it's not even just the restaurant owners. It's the people who work in the restaurants as well, the wait staff. I mean, that's 500,000 people alone right there who are either out of work or struggling. And there's not a lot of help right now. And that's why, you do see a lot of people trying to do whatever they can to help with the situation. There's only so much you can do. But that's why I appreciate what you're doing. And I was, when you asked me and said what the cause was, I was like, oh my God, this is a no-brainer. This is exactly what I'm trying to help with as well. So I appreciate what you're doing as well. And hopefully that TikTok audience that you have, which is, you made it sound like it was large, is coming in on this as well, and people will help.
Yeah, I mean, we are streaming like right here right now on TikTok as well.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So this all is on TikTok. So whatever, obviously when I look down like this, I'm trying to like look at the camera here. But yeah. So let's talk about food for a little bit. So
definitely, man.
So what are what is your favorite bagel?
I've always kind of been an everything guy. Just throw it all on there. And then also, you got to do the bacon, egg, and cheese. Like that's the way I was raised. That's the way it goes. That is a funny question though, because I've never actually really thought about that. It's just
Mhm.
something I've always ordered.
Right, right, right. So just, I'm sorry, we'll get back to food in a second. Somebody said, how can we donate? There is a
That's a great
link.
point. I did see that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there is a link in my bio, whether you're watching this on Instagram or TikTok, that you can go to, and there's a GoFundMe set up because it was just the easiest logistic way of doing all of this. Um,
No, it's a great
so,
point. Yeah, yeah.
so do you have a favorite bagel place like that you go to? Like, will you?
Well, so I live up in Harlem, and we have a place down the street called Bo's Bagel, which usually has, with or without COVID, there's a line down the street for this place. Um,
Mhm.
you know, Possibly also because it's the only bagel place in the area, but it's really good. It deserves a line. But it's if it weren't for that, I try to find the mom and pop places. Those are really where you can get like the best. I stay away from the chains.
Yeah,
You want to find that the homegrowns, because New York arguably has the best bagels. So so many people. I have family who live down in Florida, and they always talk about how it can't compare.
right. Well, it's the water. That's
And
really what it
that's what everyone
becomes.
says, and that goes for the pizza as well.
Right.
Everyone
Yeah.
talks
Yeah.
about the water.
Right. So when I was younger, I worked in a pizzeria. So like that's like one of the key ingredients, obviously, in making the dough, which is then your flavor base. Um, Obviously, with pizza, it's also access to like the right sauces and cheeses and so on, and things are different in New York just because of the size of this versus other places in the country. So perfect segue to pizza. What is like your go-to pizza order when you go into the pizzeria?
I'm a big margarita guy, and I know I'll catch a lot of shit for that. I love if I could find a good margarita pie. I'll absolutely go for it. Um, as far as a place, honestly, there's not one I can really zero in on. I mean, obviously, New York, there's a pizza place on every corner, and that's not to say that they're all amazing. You stay away from the dollar pizzas or whatever those are, the 99-cent pizzas. But there's just so many good places. It wouldn't even be fair to say that there's just one. But if I can find a good margarita slice, I'm all about it.
Dope. So is there any like other like Rick specific, like I have to have this kind of thing, like that you eat all the time?
Um, well, actually, pizza would be the one thing that I can eat. Honestly, I can eat cold pizza in the morning. I
Yeah.
actually, weirdly to say, I can definitely eat cold pizza anytime. That I actually love it. However, I'm also a big sushi guy. If I could find good sushi in the city, I love that as well. But to your point, um, the city, one of the best parts and my favorite parts about the city is the fact that you can get so many different kinds of food anywhere, and it's basically at the tip of your fingers. So that's why it's so important to kind of save this industry, because you're just watching all of your favorite places just go out of business, and the list of all the places that you frequent, it's just you're crossing them off one at a time, and it's really sad because not only do they have good food, there's so many memories that you have. Like, oh, there was this place I would go to at 3 o'clock in the morning when the bars let out. There's places where you just have memories of like family that visited, where, oh, I remember when me and my brother went to this one place and it's no longer open. There's kind of that sentimental side that's tied to a lot of these places that are just going out, and it's just really sad. And if there's anything that we can do, you want to try and do as much as you can to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, what we can do while we're here is tell me about some of your favorite places, because at least we can shout those out so the people that aren't here watching may take a note and go order or Seamless or something.
Right.
So what are
Yeah.
some of your
Some of my favorite, and to be honest, some of them I don't actually know how bad they're struggling, and you just have to assume a lot of them are.
right? No,
Um,
everybody is.
yeah, I mean, again, I'm a big pizza fan. You have Joe's down in the Village, which I've always been a big fan of. Um, it depends on, there's, oh man, what is the name? There's a, say, I love Peruvian food. There's definitely a place on the Upper West Side. I'm trying to remember the name right now. But that place is amazing as well. Um, any mom pop places are always amazing to me. I'm totally drawing a blank on a lot of them right now. Um, but I'm also jumping all over the place. I love, not frequenting one because there's just so many. New York has so many to offer. That's actually funny. I just saw someone write Pio Pio,
Yeah.
and that is definitely that. When I lived in Hell's Kitchen, that was one of my go-tos. Um, but yeah, there's just so many that it's almost unfair to zero in on any specific one. But um, I would prefer the smaller mom and pop places compared to the chains.
So I know we talked a little bit earlier about outdoor dining, and obviously in 25-degree weather, even with heaters, like I know I don't want to do it. Like I'll order out or I'll order delivery, but like for me, I've noticed that like my limit is probably about 45, 50 degrees because after that it's just like uncomfortable.
Right.
But I do think that like seeing these open air mini restaurants on the street will, because they're here to stay. I
Yeah.
think it
Yeah.
will
I heard
change
the
the
same thing.
landscape of New York. And I
Right.
think it gives New York a little more European feel. And I honestly like it, with the exception of like mid-November to like March.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem is that, you are going to have to compete with the cold, and, a lot of people don't want to do that. You brought up a point that I think is really important that I brought up about a week ago, and that is ordering out. Um, I made a comment about trying not to use the food apps,
Mhm.
only because they take, a big cut of that money that's going towards that, whatever that business or establishment is. And a lot of people, um, I got a lot of backlash for that because a lot of people said, the people who work for those apps also need, they need to work as well. And I think it's important to differentiate the fact that, you know, my point of that was that the more money that can go towards the business, the better. I understand it's very convenient and easy to order through an app like Seamless or Uber Eats or DoorDash. But I think a lot of people, and if you're not from New York, you may not know this. Um, they these delivery people work for the business, so they're getting a Seamless order, and it's the same thing as if you called in. It's not different, and I know that that might be different around the country. I'm not sure, but like if you work for Seamless,
So that's
or
seamless.
or Uber Eats. I know Uber Eats, you go to the business and pick it up and then drive it,
Right.
and those fees are all separate because that's all in Uber. And I get that. Um, but you also have to think, these guys, and this was more specifically for when it was snowing. I was making a point to tip your delivery men extra because of what they
Absolutely.
have to deal with. And I mean,
Absolutely.
if you don't agree with that, I mean, come on. Like,
Mm.
I get it. It's convenient to sit at home and just order food, but think about what the people are going through that have to bring you that food. So, that's kind of an important thing to realize. And that's all I was trying to say.
Hmm.
It was not about trying to knock the people who work for the apps. It's just in New York City, a lot of those delivery people already work for the business anyway. So, you might as well just call the business and order then, and it's going to be the same person bringing you the food either way. So, I totally understand that there are people employed by some of these apps who need money as well. I was just thinking about the business and the people doing the deliveries, and not necessarily the apps themselves. And
No.
also, I'm not even ruling out the apps. Just as a first option, think about calling the restaurant. If
Yeah.
not, then use the apps. I know a lot of these businesses rely on the apps anyway. I was
Right.
just thinking, as a first option to definitely think about the business first.
Yeah. No. I definitely agree. Like if you can call the restaurant obviously call them directly, because it does make a difference. And listen, there's always going to be people that order. So like, calling the restaurant directly, Joe that delivers for DoorDash is not going to like be struggling because you called the restaurant directly. And the
Right.
reality is you're going to like that. Just because I know a ton of people in the industry, like that 20% or 30% fee that these companies take, depending on what it is, it becomes quite substantial. And listen, is it a cost of business? Yeah. But at a certain point, like, it makes a huge difference, especially when we're in a pandemic and, these restaurants are operating at 30% of the revenue that they were beforehand, or
Right.
none. And I mean, we haven't even seen the worst of it yet. Like,
Oh, you think so?
oh no, we're gonna see, like, by the time February hits, March hits, that you'll see another probably half of the restaurants go out of business, because who's gonna be out?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think that that's what we were talking about earlier about trying to compete with the weather and the winter. A lot of people aren't going to want to do that. And the other part is, there are the rumors where right after Christmas, New York's going into another lockdown. And again, that's not confirmed, but that has been the rumors. That New York could potentially be going back into lockdown, depending on what the hospitals look like and depending on what all these rates of COVID look like. If that happens, I mean, it's going to absolutely decimate that industry, which is
Yeah,
already decimated.
absolutely. Now listen, the one thing, the one bright light is there'll always be people who open restaurants, right? So like, even after all this is over, the industry is going to come back alive at certain points, because what you're going to see is you're going to see the restaurateurs that couldn't make the restaurant make sense at $100 a square foot in rent, but all of a sudden, because the market shifted and now that rent is half of what it was, it absolutely makes sense. So I do think you'll see, in the coming years, and it was funny, I heard something that part of the reason people believe that there were the roaring 20s was because of the Spanish flu, where, one of the things that really pushed people getting out there and spending more and engaging more was the fact that they were inside for 2 years. Thankfully, knock on wood, hopefully it's not 2 years for us. I think by the end of the summer, we'll be able to take off masks here in New York City, and try to get back to some normal. But it's going to be a long period of time before, you start to see that life that you saw again across the city. There are pockets, surprisingly, that are still as vibrant, if not more vibrant, than it was before. But I think a lot of it, like you said earlier, ties to the restaurants being open. Like, I've seen a lot in the boroughs, in Astoria, in Park
Mm-hmm.
Slope, that are just as crazy as it was pre-corona. But I also saw a lot of people like, well, I don't need to pay Manhattan rent if I don't need to be this close to the office.
Right.
If all these restaurants aren't open, I'll go to the boroughs.
Right.
So I've seen that happen. But I do think, in the big picture, jobs will come back. It's going to be a longer, struggle. But, we'll find new restaurants that we fall in love with, hopefully. And it's always unfortunate to see people struggle, but that's why we're doing this. We're doing this to try to
Agreed.
help
Yeah.
in the immediacy, because frankly, like, it's the holiday season, and after this year of things that people have done, it's like the least we can do is use whatever influence we have to try to positively impact, as many people as possible.
Agreed. And that's why I really appreciate why you're doing this.
So, while we're talking about food, right? Are you more of like a sweet or a savory type?
Savory for sure. I was never really a sweet person or a dessert person.
Okay.
I have no idea why. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah. So my wife is actually the sweet, and I'm like, I could pass on dessert. I'm like, eh. Meanwhile, she's the exact opposite. She's like, I have to have dessert all the time. So what are some of like your go-to, like, I eat this at least once or twice a week, or I eat this every week, kind of consistent, mainstays?
I'm a big meat guy. I love steaks. Um, you know, if I can get around to a good steak or have it, go to a place where it's, I know I can count on having a great one. I will absolutely do that. You know, trying to think of a place like that. You know, trying to think of, there was a place I was at the other day and I can't think of the name of it, but steak is definitely a big one for me.
So fun fact about steak that I found out the other night, totally kind of randomly, because of Corona, right? You are now able to almost get same day reservations at Peter Luger's, whereas like before you were looking at like a 3 month wait time. So you know they do have indoor dining or outdoor dining still. Well, actually, no. There is no indoor in New York right now. I think actually
There's no
that
indoor,
stopped.
no. And I will say
Yeah.
Peter Luger's to me is, I'm not the biggest fan, I'll be honest. And
Okay.
it's not even necessarily related to you know, the food itself, but you know, it's just, it kind of seems touristy, and you know, the people there, I've never really had a great experience. But you know, I know people preach about it, but
Yeah, yeah.
you
No,
know,
the service has historically sucked. Like
yeah.
they're known for their absolutely shitty service, um, which is why I was like very shocked at how good the service was when we were there. I was like, this isn't normal. Like I expected them to be rude and so on. Um, I like their steak. I'm not crazy about the fact that they don't have mashed potatoes, which doesn't make sense to me. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So with the holidays approaching,
Mhm.
are you going anywhere? Are you, because of COVID, are you staying home? Like what is your holidays looking like?
I'll be doing some traveling, definitely locally right now. You know, I have family in New Jersey, which I'll be staying with. Um, and you know, we're having a kind of a low key year, obviously, because of everything that's going on. So, you know, it's going to be a quiet year for sure, but obviously, this is kind of an unprecedented, you know, holiday season. So, you know, there's really you got to be cautious with everything you're doing.
So is the holidays at the McGuire's generally like a huge food fest?
It is actually, and to be honest with you, my parents are divorced. I have two sides of the family, so there's you're jumping around to a lot of different places and
Hmm.
seeing a lot of definitely a lot of, you know, family again this year. Don't really know what to expect because you know everyone's being cautious, but you know, either way, I have a dad's side of the family and a mom's side of the family to see. So you know, you hop around a little bit, and it always keeps the holidays interesting.
Yeah, no. I totally get it. That's cool. So I'm going to switch back from food just to social media for a second because I
Yeah,
know there's a lot of people that listen, follow your account and maybe know a little bit more or really want to kind of get to that point where they're able to make social media a business or what they do.
right.
So I know when we first met, like you were just at that point of like just doing social. So like talk to us a little bit about like what that looks like and what that's been like and obviously how things have changed because of Corona or so on.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, you know, the Subway Creatures account, you know, has really, there was one point where I was doing pop-up shows with a lot of musicians and artists. Again, we talked about adapting. You really have to adapt with the times. And by that, you know, I have a couple of projects coming up where, you know, not only helping the restaurant industry, but I'm also, you know, there was a lot of musicians and buskers that would play in the subway. I need to find a way to help them, and that's what I'm actually working with the MTA on right now. Is finding a way to, you know, even if it's just virtually tipping people, where we can still hear. You know, there's a lot of musicians that came out of the subway. There's a person. Her name is Just Sam. She just won American Idol last season,
Oh,
and
really?
she was performing at the 96th Street station. So you know,
Wow.
there's also a number of other people like Mike Young, who was on America's Got Talent. He finished in the top three. Again, discovered in the New York City subway. These are all people who have serious talent, but it just never got featured, or you know, there was never a spotlight on them because you know they just didn't have it. And I want to bring attention to that and you know help these people out. And they're struggling right now. You know, a lot of these people depended on tips, you know,
Right.
to get by every day. And they can't even do that right now because you can't even safely perform in the subway. And, you know, unfortunately, they kind of boot you if you're down there and if you're not wearing masks. So there's a lot of restrictions that these, you know, a lot of these musicians and buskers are up against. So I think that, you know, just adapting and helping them is definitely big. As far as the, you know, the business side, you know, yeah, Subway Creatures isn't, you know, it isn't the same as it was. It's not flourishing the way it was. Luckily, the What is New York page, a lot of people were actually following that account during quarantine to see what was happening outside because, you know, you couldn't go outside. And luckily, people were still sending me a lot of videos. You know, I did a series called Rooftop Quarantine where people were just doing the most ridiculous things, you know, on their
Yeah.
roof. And, you know, a lot of this stuff it was entertaining and at the same time informative because you were actually able to see what people were doing outside because a lot of people weren't venturing out because we didn't know what was going on at the time. So from a business perspective, you know, things have been, you know, they have been not as well as they've been in the past, but you just have to adapt. And, you know, whether it's original content or whether it's finding ways to partner up with businesses or brands, it's absolutely important to keep expanding with what you have.
Right. And I know within probably the last 6 months or so, or maybe it's a little bit longer and I'm slightly off, you've moved these brands as well to TikTok.
Listen, I've tried. I have two younger sisters who are on TikTok, and you know, I'm actually asking them for a lot of help because I don't get it. I know that it's a huge emerging platform. I'm still learning about it. You know, I'll post one video on one of my accounts, it'll get 1 million views, and then I'll post it on TikTok and it'll get 100. I don't get it, but I'm working on that. And I do know that it's kind of important to evolve onto that platform. So that's something I'm definitely getting advice from people on. But for whatever reason, the content, and maybe it's because it's a younger audience, I don't think it's resonating as well as it is on, you know, the Instagrams of the world. So it's just kind of finding that crossover of what works.
Yeah, and I mean it's one thing that I've learned in the period that I've been creating content is like what works on one thing may not work on another thing, platform wise.
Right.
Like what you put on Facebook, if you're even on Facebook, or was not what would work on Instagram, which is not what would work on LinkedIn or podcast or whatever else it may be. I love TikTok. And the only reason I say that is because I find TikTok to be the one place where people are the closest version of their real selves. Like I see vulnerability like I've never seen. Like you see people share stuff that they would never share. And I think it's just the progression of where we're going. And I always try to think of it or explain it. Like I think TikTok is doing for video what Instagram did for pictures.
Okay.
And
I can see
it's,
that, and I know a lot of people who are swearing by TikTok. You know, actually, you know, Dre, who I think is coming on this a little bit later, you know,
yeah,
is a good friend of mine, and he swears by it, and he loves it, and it's been really been working for him. I have another friend, Devin Rodriguez, who draws pictures of people
yeah.
on the subway, and that guy blew up on TikTok, and he actually got listed as like one of the top 10 biggest TikTokers of the year. You know, depending on the content, it absolutely works for some people, and whereas some it's not. But it's the vulnerability side of things. It definitely seems like you know, it works for some people, and for those people I just mentioned, I'm super impressed with how they've been able to expand on that brand.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's super interesting. It's like if I look at like the time that I've spent into Instagram versus the time I've spent on TikTok versus, you know, following, it's insane. Like I've spent, I don't know, 6 or 7 years on Instagram to get to where I'm at. Whereas, you know, TikTok, I've been on TikTok for a year and, you know, we have 175,000 followers. And it's crazy. Like it goes back to what you were talking about with brands earlier. It just opens doors. You know, I just was at Citi Field. I'm going to do some, you know, more collab work with the Mets. We're doing some stuff with Airbnb. So it's like, I don't know. It's just, it's the future of and it's not just TikTok. It's like what we're doing now is the future of what the world is and how we're going to communicate it. And yes, after COVID, we'll get back to having a drink at a bar, but the ability to have these conversations like this and connect with people and use our influence, I think is going to continue to forever evolve.
Agreed. Yeah, well said. Definitely, and that's why, you know, a lot of these platforms, like you said, are super important and that's why I'm trying to get over to that and learn more about it.